Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is photographer and writer, Peter Miller. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Thank you, thank you. It's nice to be up in the Northeast Kingdom.
Oh, it was great to have you on, and it was great, and also I appreciate your book. You've done a lot of great work.
Well, what else are you to do?
Right. Is this what you've done all your life, or did you have another chapter?
This is it. It happened, it began in about 1948, 49, I think. I was living in Weston, Vermont, and I'm a Flatlander. We came up because we were broke. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother and my brother and sister came up, and a relative gave us a house to live in Weston. And I came up and looked around, and I saw these woods and these fishing and hunting and skiing. I said, this is heaven. And there were 13 dairy farms in the area, but I spent a lot of time shooting, plinking, hunting,
Right.
all that sort of thing. I really liked that. And then one day somebody came up, some local obviously, and took all my rifles and shotguns, and they weren't much, but they were gone.
They borrowed them, right?
They borrowed them.
And have you got them back yet?
No, not yet. I hear they were buried on top of a mountain for a while. But anyway, my mother had them insured, and she gave me a check for $160. Mm-hmm. I bought a camera. I bought a good reflex cameras. I think it was a Kodak Reflex or Icoflex. Shot 2 1/4 pictures. And I have the faintest idea why I did that. Nobody in my family was, except taking snaps, was interested. And I started taking pictures of a lot of people. I took pictures in school. Most of them were pretty lousy. But I started taking pictures of the farmers in my town. And I'd go up and meet them, and they say, oh, you're that new boy that lives in that chicken coop type of house, aren't you? And we'd have a conversation, and I got along fine with it. And I started taking pictures of them, and I took good pictures. I mean, they were, obviously I had some sort of talent for shooting a well-composed picture of people. I hadn't really thought about it. So I shot these pictures and stuck them away, and I kept shooting. I went away to school in Canada, and then I went into the U.S. Army over to Paris. And then I came back, and I said, I have to learn to write. And I got a job with Life magazine, and I was a reporter there, and I did learn to write and to report. And then I quit. I quit after 4 years to come back to Vermont. I gave up one of the best jobs in journalism. But my gut told me I wasn't a corporate guy. Mm-hmm. I just didn't like it. I came back to Vermont. I had 2 children, and it was a perfect place for kids. So I came back. I was a nobody up here, and I was broke. And I said, what have I done? And I started a ski magazine with my brother called Vermont Ski, and then that got killed in one of the recessions. And I started freelancing. Mm-hmm. On sports mostly to begin with, and then I traveled a lot, about 7 months a year all over the place, taking pictures for magazines. And then I came back, and I had an editor in New York who said, you're shooting a lot of stock photography, and you're shooting nice pictures, but you're not really taking care of your talent. You shouldn't be doing this. You should be doing something else. Else. He said, everybody's got talent and you're not utilizing it. He wasn't saying I was a genius, he just said, and everybody does have some sort of talent. So I thought about it. I came up to Vermont, and the bicentennial was coming up, and I said, I've been shooting these black and white portraits for about 30 years. Maybe there's a book in it. It would be good to come out at the bicentennial. And having worked for Life, which was really about people, I had all these people photographs of mostly farmers. So I dug them up, and I found I didn't have enough photographs, so I started to take more. And I said, I don't know anything about doing a book, but I did learn in New York is one rule was always to work with people that are a little smarter than you.
Oh, yeah.
And so I got some good people around me, and they helped me along. And my bank wouldn't give me a cent, so I changed to another bank, and they increased my mortgage. And I used that money to do this book. And I was worried that I might lose my house, so I sent out 18 releases to the newspapers, and I said, this is my book. It's been turned down by 13 publishers, and if I don't succeed, it's my gift to the state of Vermont for the bicentennial. And people wrote me and said, boy, you're a jerk, and you're gonna, if 13 publishers turned down, you ought to have some sense. Well, I didn't. And I knew I had a good book. I mean, my background with photography, of working for Karsh, and working with all the life photographers and writing and so forth, I knew it's never been covered in Vermont, as far as I knew. So I started shooting these, and then because of my reporting and observation, I got little stories, and I just happened to have hit that time where Vermont was attracting skiers and out-of-staters, and the Vermonters were saying, what's going on? These people pay fortunes for wrecks, and then they tear it down and build it again. They must have a lot of money. And they were mystified. And what was happening, it was changing. Vermont was changing a bit, and the farms were in trouble, as they'd been for so long. So the book, I did the book, and some bookstores didn't want to take it. They said, you self-published. You know, who self-published? Like, I'm from the wrong side of the tracks? Get out of my store. And eventually they took it, and I sent the book to a bunch of newspapers. And they started to run, some of them run spreads on it. And they thought, this is glorious. And got good publicity, and there were some good sellers, and I sold out. I was told by people at Vermont Life that I wouldn't sell 2,000 books in 10 years. Well, I sold 3,000 in 6 weeks. And then I sold another 3,000. I kept selling up to 15,000 of those books, which paid for itself. I did some other books I lost. And my stock photography that was sold globally by a company in New York helped pay for it. Otherwise, I couldn't have done it. So I did these books, and they worked. I got a name for them. I did Vermont Farm Women. I won a bunch of awards. I set up a Vermont Farm Women Fund. And I did various things like this. Well, I didn't think much about it. And then I got, the Burlington Free Press made me Vermonter of the Year. And that was funny. People looked at me and they said, you? Vermonter of the Year? And then there's the legislature, they gave me one of these proclamations because I did a lot of things for the culture of Vermont, which I never thought about. But so that happened, and then I keep going. I do more books, and some books sell well and some don't, and I dump my money in it, and then all of a sudden the stock photography changes. There's no more stock photography. There's no more professional photography, hardly. Everybody is a photographer.
Oh, I was going to ask you that. You know, I watch on the computer, everybody owns a camera, they're photographers.
They're all photographers. And the digital camera, and 3-year-old can go to a wedding with a digital camera and really shoot good pictures.
Yeah, but the thing is, there is a difference still.
There is, but many of the new pictures have that look of being shot with an iPhone.
Right.
And that's happening a little bit. And then if you look on Flickr, you see all these photographs. There's millions or hundreds of thousands are sent in. And out of those, there's some really good ones. So my income went from being way up and licensing photographs, selling pictures to my agent from $500 to $10,000, went boom, down. So now I'm making maybe $4,000, $5,000 a year. So I said, well, what am I going to do? I'm broke. So I do the books, and I hope this works.
Right.
And if it doesn't, I got my tax bill, as many other Vermonters did. They looked at it and said, we got to leave. We can't afford this state. And I think the state shot itself in the foot. And so did a lot of the selectmen by raising the taxes so much.
Right. You know, you and I actually do we have a lot in common, because, you know, in my history magazine, I'm not a photographer. I own a camera. But if I take a good photo, it's dumb luck, and I took enough of them. And but I go around and talk to many of the characters, such as the characters you talk to, and just get their stories, and then put it into writing. Then I put it out every month into my magazine.
It's stories.
Right, and
that's what you're after, is just stories.
Right, the stories. Right, and
that's it.
Okay.
Keep your mouth shut and listen, and there's a story someplace.
And usually the person with the story are the people who say they don't have a story.
Yeah, they
because a lot of times the people who jump up and down and say they have a story to tell, it's not that great of a story. But a lot of times the best stories come from people that you have to kind of draw it out of them, because they might not even know it. They may not realize that they have something to tell.
And you sit there and you listen. And the best thing I found is keep your mouth shut. And they hesitate or something, keep your mouth shut. And sometimes they'll do a corner and start telling about something else. And all of a sudden, there's a story. Now, what's a story? I don't know. I just know in here.
Right, and that's the way I am. You know, you just get there. You know, I've watched a group here in Vermont that records history, oral history, but the last thing I knew, they used to teach people to have a list of questions and go right down that. I don't do that. I kind of like take the interviews and just let it meander. I know the questions I want to ask, but I don't go in a particular order, like name, rank, and serial number, because if it's name, rank, and serial number, the people are too busy on being regimented and not just flowing.
What I found with people, you got to look at them. I visit before I take a picture.
Yeah,
I sit down and talk. And I'm looking around at the surroundings. I'm talking to the couple or the woman or the man, and they're telling me things, I'm telling this, and there's a way that you talk to Vermonters, and I'm a Vermonter. I've been here so long. That's what I am. And so I just talk to them, and they relax. I'm not a threat to them. And I'm looking around, see the pictures on the wall, and I ask them what their interest is or what they're doing, and they often tell me. And I said, well, let's take a look at your farm or whatever. And they'll give me a show.
Right. And you know, the thing is a lot of times, especially with old-time Vermonters, they want to feel you out. They want to figure out who you are, and then then they will allow you into their world. But they want to figure, and you know, me having lived here for generations, and I think so. Sometimes when I'm able to name drop like my say my grandfather, when I did my book Rum Runners and Revenuers: Prohibition in Vermont, the people who had done that activity, they felt very much at ease. They felt comfortable when they knew that my grandfather had gone to prison for prohibition violation. It was just a comfort to them to know. All right, well, this is your latest book, A Lifetime of Vermont People. So let's talk a little bit about what is this book? This is a book of a compilation of your interviews and photos?
Well, my first book had 127 pages, Vermont People. This one, I have 60 profiles of Vermonters, and I took the photographs of 60 people, and there are more than 60. There are 203 photographs in it. 208 pages. The book kept getting bigger. I didn't want to cut a lot of the stories. I still had to cut some. They just kept popping up. And so this book is from 1950 is the first photograph when I was in high school to 2013. In 1950 I shot. Art Johnson, who was gathered junk in Weston and also had a horse and skidded out logs. And then the last story I did, I think, was Warren Kimball, a folk artist from Brandon. And all these people are I selected them and I wrote them, and some of the stories went back to Vermont people, were in Vermont people, like Fred and stuff. I rewrote every story, and many times I added more information that wasn't in the first book. And then I interviewed everybody who was still alive. What's going on with your life? How are things going? And I got more stories out by doing that. So.
Okay, and the book also includes several stories related to the Northeast Kingdom.
A lot.
And this is the Laser Farm, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is what, Jack Laser?
Okay, Jack Laser, and that farm, that was shot with a 2-foot. I had to sit there for quite a while while the moon raised over the barn. And so I shot it again.
Right.
I changed lenses, make the moon bigger. And then I shot Ann and Jack.
Right.
Ann is a homeopath,
Right.
and she takes care of the herd. And Jack is crazy about grain and taking care of the land. So they were farming. When they first came up, I mentioned in the book that rocks were popping up like popcorn out of their field, and they spent a lot of time removing them. So they're the first story in the book.
Right. And how did you come about Jack and Ann? Because they're not real public people. They go about their work.
I can't recall.
Right. And now
I think somebody talked about them, or they said, "Oh, you ought to try their yogurt." And when I did, I said, "Whoa, this is good."
Right.
And I went up there, and I went up there a number of times and did stories on them.
Right. Now, this fellow, most people recognize him, is Schumann from the Bread and Puppet Theater.
Yes, Peter Schumann and Elka. Peter Schumann, of course, is that 10 or 12-foot man leading the parade.
On the stilts.
He's my age. Right. He's 79.
Did you try the stilts?
Oh, no. I'd fall flat. Oh, he's good at it.
Does he still get on the stilts? Does he still do that?
Yes.
Oh, he does.
I mean, that's incredible for him, I think. And Elka, she's the granddaughter or something of the Scott Nearing group. And he was one of the first back to the country farmers, escaping the city, and he lived down at Stratton. And Stratton started getting big or developed, and he moved to Maine. So they have a long history. He's an agitator, and he also does some very funny skits about Vermont. Or he had one of them which was about puppets, about sugaring. And one of them was a drop dancing around. It was very funny. I like him. I get along with him. He's got a very tough side to him, and he's got a very easy side to him.
What do you think about the bread, though? Yeah, did you try any of the bread?
Yes.
I think I'm one of the few people that really, I can leave it.
He puts a lot of pesto on it,
Right.
which is bay leaves, and he does it outside. It's a rough type bread that he made when he was a refugee as a kid, or his family made when they were escaping from Nazism.
Right.
So it's sort of like communion. Everybody goes and has a piece of it there.
So he's
And if you watch his show, you might be a little hungry. So
Right.
And it's free.
he and Elka have been doing this for 50 years this year. This is their 50th.
50 years?
Yep, they're celebrating their 50th year.
Wow.
This is their anniversary year.
I didn't know that.
Well, the only reason I know it is because I saw it in the paper. So it isn't something I learned other than through the
Yeah.
paper. They've been recognizing it as the
He's got that museum
right.
at his place.
Yeah.
And one of the New York Times art critics a while ago said it's one of the best museums in America. You go in there and you're in another world. It's just something.
Okay, what about these people?
All right, we have we got Sean Hill, Sean Hill and his father.
Right.
Sean Hill was making. He was always interested in fermenting and making beer. He had a program that he did when he was in high school in Hardwick, I believe it was. And then he worked at the Shed in Stowe and learned about brewery, making beer, and he came back and did some more work there. Then he went to Europe and he learned his craft in several countries over there, I think mostly in Denmark. And he traveled around and saw how the Europeans make it. He came home. He obviously has a feel for making beer. And he came home to his 7th or 8th generation property in Greensboro, right on the Greensboro-Glover border. And so he started a brewery up there, a microbrewery. And it's now rated as one of the best in America. He's done very well for himself. His beer is very good. It's not the...
Not that you tried it or anything.
No, not at all. It's not that Eddie Topper, which is the favorite beer, which is brewed right across from my house right now. But it's a flavorful, it's a very nice beer. And he's doing a lot more now. So he's doing quite well. And then we got Fred.
Now he isn't a Northeast Kingdom boy, but everybody knows Fred Tuttle. Fred, man with the plan.
Fred was the
And who, I can't recall, who did he kind of run against? There was that fella who moved here from Massachusetts or something.
Something or other. I forget. It's in the book now.
And then he decided to allow Leahy to become senator, and didn't he step out of the race?
Oh, he did. He did. His wife looked at him and said, "You ain't going to Washington over my dead body. That's what."
Well, you know what? My wife actually said that to me when I ran for the state house, but I won. And after 2 terms, she said, "You're coming home."
Yeah.
So I guess my wife wasn't as strong as Fred's wife.
Well, I was there when she was yelling at him, and Fred was like this, and then he looked at me and with a sly grin.
So Fred's been gone for a while.
He's pardon?
Fred's been gone for a while.
Yes,
now.
he died in 87, was it?
Now, when you look at Fred, you know, Fred's
203, I think it was.
Fred's a character, and I find that people who actually work the land have so much more character. You know, a lot of them seem to have a real wit about them, but then you can see the work on their face. You know, they just have character.
Yeah, I wonder about it, and in Vermont you see it a lot, and I say, well, it's cold out, and there's a lot of water, and I go out west, and I did a book on people of the Great Plains, and they're sort of dried out in their face. And Vermonters aren't. It was much more interesting photographing Vermonters than it was people in the Great Plains, as far as faces go. They were very similar otherwise. And, you know, you had to get to, you know, I'd go out there and he says, "You're a long way from home, Vermont, huh? Are you one of those no good environmentalists?" It's me. No, well. And then you never talk politics with those people. But I had a good time out there I really enjoyed it. I went 40,000 miles through the Great Plains with a little Airstream and had a wonderful time. Did a good book, won a bunch of awards with it, and didn't sell worth a darn. So.
You know, it's funny you say that. You had to explain you weren't an environmentalist. I was, just in recent days, I was bringing a Yankee Magazine reporter around, and he wanted to go and interview somebody at a hunting and fishing store. And, well, when I walked in there, I immediately, because I already knew the song and dance, I immediately said, okay, this guy here, Ben from Yankee Magazine, wants to interview you, but just to let you know, his sons hunt and trap, because that was just saying, okay, this isn't one of those people who are going to end up burning us. Because you do have to, you know, when you meet people, you know, they want to know where you're coming from.
I can read Vermonters now so quickly, and they can read me. I was in Waterbury in my house 2 years ago in the November, October, and I said, I'm sick of here. I'm sick of all this traffic and these people. I want to go back and see something in Vermont. I went up to Elmore. And I went into the Elmore store. Kathy Miller runs it, and she's quite a woman. So I'm just talking to her and looking around, and two guys enter the room. I look at them and say, my God, they're Vermonters. You know, I hadn't seen one. I mean, George Woodard and some of my friends down there, there are not many left. But these people, they were dressed apart, and I started talking to them, and they started talking to me, and this sort of dry humor started coming out, and it went to deer season pretty quick, and it was just refreshing. I said, there's still Vermont left, and that's when I think more or less I said, I got to move to the Northeast Kingdom, because it's not too good for Vermonters down where I live. It's becoming a bedroom town and a sort of a suburb of Burlington, Montpelier, and its own suburb. And then Stowe. What is Stowe, you know? Well,
and there is a fear, you know, whether it's justified or not, there is also a fear of that happening here, though, with so much going on, is that, you know, progress is good to a certain point. But, you know, I think a lot of people understand you've got to be careful and not rob us of what makes us special.
That's a very good point. I bring it up. At the end of this book, I did 6 pages of history in my time. But I covered things like accents, gentrification, the interstate, barns, things like this. Ice cream, which Ben & Jerry's was the beginning of the local food thing, I believe. But I wrote this in the back, and I talked about gentrification, and I talked about the Northeast Kingdom. And the people up here are happy. When I went to the Barton Fair recently, I had a wonderful time. Everybody was so nice. Even the person that sells me some French fries, which I shouldn't eat. I mean, everybody had a big smile on their face. And I don't see that so much down below. So these people up here, they're good. And then I mentioned the Northeast Kingdom and what is going on with Jay Peak and this green card. And I said, this is probably good to a certain extent, just like you said, because there are a lot of people, they need work or something. I said, but if they're going to bring in this high-tech stuff, where are they going to get these people? They're going to bring them in from out of state. Or they got to train the locals, and I don't think there are enough to train.
Well, no, that's it. In some of them, you're going to need doctorate degrees, too, for the biotech, some of the jobs. So,
well, I'm not sure what the answer is. And then Burke is going into, you know, that's becoming sort of an expensive area. It's very beautiful up there. I don't know what's going to happen to the Northeast Kingdom, but it is a treasure. And it should be protected by the people who are up here and not let what happened down in southern Vermont. So down in southern Vermont, sometimes the people call it Connecticut North or Massachusetts North. And there seems to be a divide at Rutland between northern and southern Vermont. Now there's a divide around Elmore on up is Vermont. And then you'll find pockets on either side that are still Vermont, you know, down around Pantone and Addison and so forth, and then down in Middleton, and then over on the other side. and these little pockets will remain. But in many areas, particularly along the spine of the Green Mountains, skiing and recreation and all these people coming up. So I don't know, there's a lot of beautiful things. Somebody said, have you been up to that fishing camp up there around, I think it's Derby, or there's a beautiful fishing camp. Go up in the fall. There's no one there, the prices are low, and there's no black flies too. I said, oh, I'd love to go up there, and I might. I never heard about it. So there are all these little things that are intriguing. Maidstone Lake, and then this valley coming into here is a microclimate. I mean, Jack Laser farms there. He knows about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, these are changing days. You know who you should take a photo of? He's so photogenic. Is David Lawrence. David Lawrence is the last of the true mountain men. He became a bit of a worldwide celebrity though, and he was the one who adopted Pete the Moose.
Oh.
And he was the one. And David, some people call him eccentric. But his wife lives in one house that I think has electricity. He lives in another house with his animals, no electricity, and he has so much wisdom. In like a Boston TV show, half-hour TV show, The Chronicle, came up and interviewed some of myself, and I introduced them to David, and they wanted to interview people about the changes, but from different angles. I was the guy kind of like caught between two worlds. My soul is with David Lawrence, but in reality, I have my other foot going towards the future. But you know, I'm like caught between two worlds, and David offered them so much wisdom. Just a great man to photograph too.
Well, this area really, there's something that should be, the state doesn't do anything for it, but it should be documented and photographed like you're doing with your shows, to keep this going, to realize what you have here. Right. And I think many people, oh, we're poor, we can't stand it, and I come up here and I see some of the ramshackle houses. Boy, I feel at home up here.
Yeah, but the thing is every time you hear, because as I said, I served in the State House, and you hear politicians talk about us, they don't understand that we might be poor financially, but there's a lot of rich people. They're rich as in not money.
And I found this out years ago, and somebody started blasting about the poor people in Weston and the North End. I said, well, Sherman takes care of those people. He lives in a tar paper shack. I said, it is neat as a pin. He's got a garden, he keeps a place. I mean, he's really good. And he's the local Nimrod. He goes and shoots deer for the Northeast Kingdom, and they trade, or not the Northeast, the North End.
Right.
And they do a lot of trading, and the game wardens know him. They look the other way because they know he's fulfilling a need. Nobody understood this. I did.
Right.
So,
and you know, some of the most boring characters I've ever interviewed were people who were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. You know, some of them have never really lived. I grew up the child of the working poor, and I had the greatest childhood there was, and I would do it all over again. But other people, you know, to this day, my brother-in-laws are loggers, and they are very successful. If you saw them out and around, you might think they weren't, but they go home to these beautiful houses. But if I were a politician from Washington or even from Montpelier or some highbrow person, they would look at them logging and say, we've got to do something to help these poor people. My brother-in-laws don't need any help. They love doing what they do. I think there's a group of people who look down their noses at anybody who works with their hands. And you know, many of the people that you interview, they work with their hands.
they've all done things themselves. That's a trait of a Vermonter. Do it yourself.
Right.
I wrote the book. I photographed the book. I picked out the designer. I worked with the designer. I talked to the people in Italy who printed it. This cover was designed specifically with mine of these printers. Then I did editing with other people and proofreading, and then when I got the book, I had to send out a whole bunch of books I pre-sold. I packed them. I put tape on them. I took them down to the post office and paid too much money to ship them out. And this is the Vermont way of doing things, is do it yourself.
Right. Do you know what I hate most about writing books or doing my journal? I can write books all day long. I can write the journal all day long. I hate marketing and selling. I just, I've talked to Howard Mosier, and he kind of feels the same way. Going out to book signings, you feel like you don't really want to bother people. You don't, and you don't want to get out there. And selling your product is almost like bragging, and I don't think Vermonters are good at bragging.
No, I don't like to sell, and I've gotten a reputation. That guy's a little nasty. People trying to get close to me. I said, what do you want? Or I'm on the phone. What do you want? I hate the phone. I want to be left alone.
Right.
I really would like to get out in the woods more. I like to find some peace and stuff, but it's hard if you have Mosier. Christ, he's well known, so he's got to talk and be nice to all the bookstores, and I try to be nice, but I would rather be at home thinking and doing my own thing and having somebody else do it, but I can't afford it.
Right. Well, I understand your plight because I love people. I do love people, but do you know how hard it is for me to go in a store around here?
Yes. I don't like to shop.
I like it, but me going into the store, it's kind of like a half a day. I have to pack a lunch.
Oh, they gotta talk and talk.
Oh yeah, but that's okay. I like it. Now, when my kids were younger and they had to sit out in the car, meanwhile that I'm in the store having a grand old time. Every once in a while, I felt this tugging on my arm, and it was either my wife or my kid saying, come with me. All right, what's this next photo?
Oh, this is Fred Tuttle and his stepson,
right,
who was home from Jordan, I believe. He's an archaeologist.
Right.
And he said, hey, shoot me in the same place you shot my father. And I did, and there he is. He got some rings in his ears, and he's happy, and he's holding in the same place. And I just thought, well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 generations shot at the same farm.
And this next photo?
Well, the next one is Howard Frank Mosier.
Right.
Howard Frank Mosier writes at the dining room table.
Right.
His longhand, and sometimes he does 7 drafts.
Yeah, that's what he said.
He goes over and over and over.
Yeah, but he doesn't use computer, right?
I didn't see one.
Yeah, I think he uses. My problem is.
I think his wife types.
Yeah, possibly, but with me, if I used longhand, by the time I got done, because my hand doesn't work that way anymore, I wouldn't be able to read it, and I probably couldn't write more than a page without my hand being tired.
Maybe this is why it takes so long writing now. I'm writing on a computer. My thoughts are not coming. I don't know what I'm doing. I get up, I go to the refrigerator, I eat, I walk around, I do this, I come back, it's still not working, I'll start it, it's a mess, and then I'll think about it, and I'll come back, and then I said, well, what's the beginning and what's the end, and I don't know, but I put something down before I go to bed. When I get up in the morning, it's all in place.
In your mind.
Yeah.
Right, I agree with you fully.
I don't know why.
Yeah,
something happens while you sleep.
Yeah, I agree. Or going down the road is another time for me.
And Howard Frank he's be working, and all of a sudden, I want to go fishing.
Yeah.
So he's a minimalist when it comes to fishing. He just puts on his hip boots, he's got a rod, he's got a few wet flies, or he might have some worms. What he really likes is little brookies.
Right.
So he'll sometimes catch big brookies.
Right.
He's got a secret place, but he wouldn't tell me where. But
Howard has helped a lot of startup writers here. He's been a great support for me, and he's been anybody with a little bit of talent, and he's willing to, in his little ways, he's not going to hold your hand, but he's going to give you just a little guidance and steer you in the right direction.
I don't know if I could write fiction. I've never done it.
Well, he writes it like historical fiction because, like Stranger in the Kingdom, I know the real story, so I'm sitting there trying to read his story as fact, and I'm saying, no. But he doesn't try to have it be fact, but he often weaves his stories around a factual event, but then takes liberty with it.
Yes, he does.
And I don't have the mind for a fiction writer, I don't believe. But on the other hand, if I was going to weave it around a factual thing, I think maybe I could, but I don't have a lot of interest in it.
The reason Howard Frank stuck around in the Northeast Kingdom, he was a school teacher, he and his wife, and he said, there's stories up here and nobody knows them. Nobody has mined them. I can't leave. I keep finding more and more stories. So they're all based, as you say, on some sort of fact. Right. And he builds those stories. Now, he just did a book with The Great Northern Express.
Right.
Did you read that?
No, I haven't yet.
You ought to read it. It's very funny. He does a tour around as the book goes. I read it and I said, I don't know what's fact. I don't know what's fiction. I don't know what, but I looked at it, I thought it was quite funny. Yeah. He has a very droll sense of humor, and he mocks himself many times. Right. So I like him a lot.
Now what's this next one?
Bud Bill, David.
Right.
David Bud Bill.
Where is he from?
He's from Wolcott. He lives up in the boonies in Wolcott. Right. Got a nice place he's built himself. Lives there with his wife, an artist. He likes being alone up there. He's very, very well known out of Vermont. Right. And his poems are on Garrison Keillor's show very often. Jude Vine, I think, has been played in about 23 states. He's never been made Poet Laureate of Vermont. And I read his poems, I said, oh, that's good. I mean, I can relate to them, maybe because I wish I were like him in the woods all the time. But he was never made Poet Laureate, so I said, I think he's a victim of the Vermont literary mafia. And I think there is one. Right. They're sort of politically correct.
Right, I could imagine that.
Yeah, and you're not. You're a grunt. I'm a grunt. Yeah. We're out in the field. Right. And it's hard to tell somebody who's behind a desk all the time and writing academically, or are interviewing people who wear the right clothes or join the right foundation. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, because a lot of the people, what I always laugh about is if you look at promotional material for, say, Vermont or the Northeast Kingdom, if they should accidentally show somebody who's really working, they're often clean and say wearing LL Bean clothes. Is like most of the people you interviewed, like Fred probably wasn't wearing LL Bean, and they looked like they work. And I am even proud of the fact that occasionally I even ruffle a few feathers about some of the things I write about. I do write about some of the beautiful stuff about the Northeast Kingdom. But I've also written a book about rum runners and revenuers, Prohibition in Vermont. I've also written about the cross burnings, the Ku Klux Klan during the 20s and 30s.
Oh, you did?
And and I've interviewed the people, you know, they're now, most of them are gone, but the thing is those are not, well, especially the Crossburns, that's not a glamorous part of our history, but it is fact. And I won't let it go away. I've recorded it. I think it's very important. I'm actually very proud of it. I'm not proud of that chapter, but I'm proud that I took the time and recorded it. But I don't know if do you ever run into anybody who says, well, you shouldn't be interviewing that person for some reason?
Oh, yes, I've been told that. You should interview so-and-so. And I said, that guy's a politician. He talks out of the side of his mouth. I'm not going to put him in. So I have my own prejudice.
Yeah.
But usually I try and, as a journalist, I keep a lot of it out. Some of the people in the book I've had a little trouble with, but they're so good at what they do, I do it anyway. It's not my prejudice that comes through, I hope.
Right.
But you try and do this, and you do find people that are looking down their nose a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I meet some very wealthy people that are very nice. There was this guy in Stowe, Gameroff. I had money up the ante, very smart. And he bought the Stowe Mountain Inn, he bought the Chittenden Trust, he did this and that. But he had Whiskers Restaurant, which was a farmhouse. And he said, well, I better learn something about this. He went out west and got a job as a short-order chef.
Well, and you know one thing about the Northeast Kingdom is there's a lot of well-known people in this area. If they don't live here, they at least visit here on a regular basis. Well, you know, Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist.
Oh yes, he was down there at Crossbury.
Yeah, Greensboro, and he was
Greensboro.
Right,
yeah.
and he was here, and he went around, no security or anything. Nobody bothered him. Donald Sutherland is a regular fixture here. He lives right across the border, part-time, right in Quebec, and he's seen in the stores, and people don't bother him. Then Bill the Spaceman Lee from the Red Sox.
Yeah.
He lives in Craftsbury part of the year. And so these people feel comfortable here because they can just be themselves.
Yeah, I've met a few of these people just by accident. And it's famous Hollywood face over, yes. And I'm looking for Bruce. Well, I rented it from Bruce. Oh, okay, I'm sorry to bother you.
Oh yeah, but, all right, this final photo.
The final photo, the Goodrich family. Goodrich Lumber down in Albany. White cedar, all the white cedar in that photograph was cut by loggers within 60 miles of their mill. And I guess there's a lot of white cedar up here, and it has very good insulation qualities. So they were making cabins and pre-cut. And then that market went down, and so they started making fences. They even made birdhouses. Colleen is very smart and quick to fill up holes in the market. And then they started making fences. And they're making fences as many as they can because down, I guess Hurricane Irene wiped out all the fences down in New Jersey. And they're doing a big business, and one of the big companies went under. So they're coming to them. So they're doing all right. But she works all the time marketing or selling the thing, and her sons are basically sawing and bringing the wood in and helping her out. They have a very good operation, and she invited me up to the Barton Fair. So I was at their booth, and she would introduce me to people, and sometimes they came up, they knew I was there, and we had a great time.
Now, talk about characters in Barton Fair. I know one celebrity that you always see set up at the Barton Fair is Paul the Butcher Vachon. Did you run into Paul?
No.
Paul, it was the Hulk Hogan of his day. He traveled the world as a wrestler. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he sets up there on the first midway every year. He, as you're going in from the barns, he's on the left. He's a Hulk of a guy, but he's in his 70s now. And his brother, Mad Dog Vashaw, and his sister, who I can't recall her name, they were a wrestling family. And particularly, I believe it was both Mad Dog and the Butcher. They traveled the world, and the Butcher has a number of books, When Wrestling Was Real. And he sets up in the exact same place every year. Now, next year when you go to the Barton Fair, you're going to have to look. As I said, when you're going from the barns headed up towards the midway, he sits there on the left, and he sells his memorabilia from wrestling, and he has other stuff, but he's a common character around. And for your camera, I think you'd have a ball with the Butcher.
Well, I'm finding out more and more about, particularly at this talk with you,
right,
about the Northeast Kingdom.
Right.
And I'm looking down in Waterbury, and it's, when things get a little bad, you move. Like they did a study down in Montana about stocking hatchery fish in a wild fish area. The next year they shocked it, the wild fish were gone. It was only the stock fish. That's the same with Vermonters. They keep going north.
Right.
Or those that can. And this is what I put, when I got my tax bill, I said, I can't afford this house. Oh my God. Immediately I bought 2 signs, put up house for sale, and I'll start moving on it a little more. I'm going to get out of that area. I need a smaller house that I can afford. Writers don't make money. And I want to move up to this area, and you're telling me about all these wonderful people.
Oh, sure. I was telling you, the other writer who lives here, I know him well, but most people, if you ask who Ed or Ted Hoagland is, most people here are like, who's that? Well, he's an essayist. He's considered one of the world's best essayists, if not the best, and he is a part-time resident here. And he's such a character because he looks almost, he looks like a, well, let me put it this way. He dresses down. He has his floppy hat on. He's a man probably in his 70s. He has a bit of a stuttering problem, but he's one of the nicest men there is. And then in the winter times, he goes back to Martha's Vineyard. But in the summer, he lives up in a place where, up towards Wheeler Mountain, no relation to me, and he sits there in a place with electricity, and he writes. And he only writes, I believe, a few words a day. So
interesting.
So
he goes down to Martha's Vineyard for the winter?
That's where he lives.
That's a
and he
cold place.
He comes.
There's good drinking down there, I hear, in the wintertime.
Good drinking?
There's nothing much else to do.
Well, that's probably true up here. Okay, we have to start wrapping up here. Actually, we went a half an hour over.
Oh, God.
Because you were so interested. How can somebody buy your book here?
They can buy the book by going to silverprintpress.com, which is my website.
And I'll have Todd, our producer, will put that up on the screen, so for the viewers.
And the other ways is I'm selling it to bookstores, like Woodnot. I'll go in and see them today. Do you want this book? No. I said, okay, goodbye. And or they say yes, and I have books in the car.
Well, tell them you're going to be on the show.
Yeah, and I'm going down to Lyndonville. She ordered 10 books at Green Mountain.
Green Mountain Books. Oh, they're great. Have you been in there?
Yeah.
That's if you're looking for a Barnes and Noble, that's not it. If you're looking for a bookstore that you can just, as you know, just to delve into and just go through everything, that's the place to go.
I'm not selling to Barnes & Noble.
Oh, really?
I'm not selling to Amazon.
Yeah.
I'm selling to the independents. If I have to deal with Barnes & Noble, I have to use a distributor. They take 55% and I lose.
Right. And the problem with a big bookstore is there's so many books. Because as a buyer, I love going into because there's so much stuff there. But as a seller, you know, yours gets lost. It's
Yeah.
So I don't deal with the big bookstores either.
I think the independents run by good people are doing well.
Right.
Because they have a loyal clientele.
Right.
And I have my books out to everyone except up here and in Lyndonville, which they'll be there shortly, and down in St. Johnsbury. Then I have the state more or less covered. Rutland, there hadn't been too much interest, but Rutland is Rutland. And but most of the state has my book now.
You know, I would suggest this to you, is some of my best sales, though, are outside of bookstores. But here's a place for you. I believe that, because Jay Peak now has a store at it, as in the resort,
Yeah.
has a store. I think your book would be a great product for them to sell, because there's a lot of people there who want to learn about the real Vermont, and I think you do offer the real Vermont.
I haven't told you about one thing.
What's that?
I have taken 100 books and made a limited edition.
Right.
And they're sleeved and come with a photograph.
Yeah.
And the first ones I sold was on Kickstarter, and they were 300 each.
Right.
I'm going to go up, and hopefully I can see Stenger or somebody up
Yeah,
there.
Bill Stenger.
This is the book you should give to those people coming and buying that green card.
Right.
This will tell them there are a lot of people in there. And then I would say this book you should have in your store.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they'll have it in your store. The other part, I'm sure there will be some good give and take. All right, we have to wrap up. What's the website?
It's www.silverprintpress.com. You can find out about all my books. Go into your local bookstore and ask them if they have the book.
And hopefully by the time...
Of course, you get a little bit of percentage discount when you come to me,
Right.
but at the same time, you have to pay postage, so it breaks even.
So let's hope by the time this show airs that they are hopefully in the Wood Knot, and they
Right.
will be in Green Mountain Books
Yes.
in Lyndonville.
Yes, they will.
Okay, and I want to thank you for coming on. I think your work you're doing is simply amazing. I think future generations of Vermonters are going to be thanking you for all the work you've done, because, I look at your work and I think we're almost on the same page. I focus more on the words, the stories. You focus a little more heavy on the photos, but then you get the stories. And
Yeah.
I think we really complement each other.
No, we'll do a book together.
So, do you think we can get rich? One of my sons lives right near another poverty-stricken writer. He's little known, but Stephen King. And maybe Stephen King has some advice for us.
Just 1% of what he makes.
Yeah,
That's
just
all.
think about it. Yeah, because you know what? A lot of people who don't write, when they think of authors, I believe they lump us all in there with the Stephen King, and
Yeah.
little do they know.
I think the average writer makes, if he's lucky, $5 an hour.
But you are rich, though. You are rich as in a person.
Yes,
Yeah, because
I've done what I'm supposed to do,
right.
and I like it.
Right. I wake up every morning. I cannot wait to go to work. My doctor says there's no hope for me. He said, as somebody who loves the work as much as I do, he says,
My daughters gave me heck for this, of being too engrossed, too obsessive about my work.
yeah, but is it work to you? Is it, or is it a passion? Is it your...
It's a passion and it's an obsession. It's a quest for. It's really a quest for beauty. That's all I can say.
Right. Okay, on those words,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on the show. It was a fascinating
Yes, thank
experience.
you. It was fun.
All right. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.